No matter your age, your plan for retirement can start today. From the News Channel 5 Network, this is the Retirement Report.
Good morning. Welcome to the Retirement Report. I'm Hank Parrott, your host. We're going to be talking about retirement plans today. 401k, 403b, 457s, your thrift savings plans. One of the things we're seeing is there's new research that's coming out. I've shared with you in the past about some of the research that's saying that the stock market, the returns are expected to be much less than what they have been over the last decade. In fact, over the last 20 to 30 years even, we're expected to see, well, we saw quite a much higher rate of return. Now we're looking at about half that rate of return, or depending on your asset allocation, maybe you're going to see somewhere in the neighborhood of, I've seen research that's showing me as low as 2.33%, 2.3% returns, up to 4.5% returns. So one of the things this is going to indicate is the need for asset allocation, the importance of it, and understanding it. All right, so here's, when it comes to researching 401ks and retirement plans in general, there's a tremendous amount of research available to us. Nobel Prize winning research, in fact, that shows an academic approach based on the academic research, the development of portfolio design that can help you get a higher return while still, in fact, reducing probably over what you're currently doing in terms of your risk. All right, so think of it this way. This is a way for you to get a better return with less risk. The key is understanding how these markets work. The problem lies in when you're looking at your 401k, and I see this all the time when new clients are coming in and I'm reviewing their accounts and we're looking at their investment accounts or their 401k statements and seeing how they're invested currently. And I ask, how did you happen to choose these? Sometimes maybe they got some advice from one of the advisors that's the administrators of the plan, the custodian. Sometimes it's just they're just looking at the past returns and saying, well, that looks good, let me try that. Maybe they do a little research online and try to figure out exactly which funds they should have. The problem in many instances is not understanding how asset allocation works. And here's another very important part to that, is understanding the difference between active management and passive management. And when it comes to 401ks, unfortunately, many of them are quite short on passive managed funds, index funds in other words. Most of them are unfortunately have some very bad choices to even to try to even make sense of. And then of course there are the target funds. So depending on who the custodian of your 401k or your again other retirement type plans, IRAs, is going to be the same kind of thing for you as well as to what's available to you. Now in 401ks, 401k is a defined contribution plan, is the way it's referred to. These were set up back in the early 80s, and they at first they were never meant to replace defined benefit plans according to those that were really pushing for the 401k, but to be an added way to help people save for retirement that would work with their defined benefit plans. The problem, since that time, we have seen a huge drop in pension plan availability through private employers. So in fact, back in those early 80s, about 38% of people working, private employees, had a pension plan. They were going to have a pension for life. Today it's only 13%, about 1/3 as much. So it puts more and more stress on the worker to save for their own retirement. This means you're going to have to be taking more and more responsibility in how much you save. And now with lower returns, that could put even more pressure on you as far as how much you're saving. Asset allocation is the key though. With that, we can improve returns. If you look at, according to Dalbar as an example, the average investor received about 1/3 what a passively managed index fund would have provided over, and that's looking at most any 10, 15, 20-year scenario, you're going to see this same kind of result. What we know is that passive management is what works, and that means asset allocation. And here's what asset allocation is about. All right, first off, it's about stocks, bonds, and cash. All right, you can think of those three things. So that means how much I'm going to have in stocks. And typically, when you're saving for retirement, I would say in particular for those in their 30s and 40s, you want to have at least 60%, maybe even 75% of your portfolio in stocks. All right, the next part is the bond part, is understanding there. Now we're talking, of course, about 25 to 40% in bonds. Part of this has to do with your own risk tolerance. In other words, how comfortable you are when you see the fluctuations in the stock market. When you understand that if you're investing in the stock market, and again, utilizing the principles I'm going to be talking about this morning, so you're still going to have about 1 in 4 years that are going to be negative years. So if you accept that going in, and that average, okay, then the next part is how much drop might you be comfortable with? If the market dropped 10%, are you going to be able to stay invested and stay disciplined? 20%, same thing. Now the nice thing when you're saving up for retirement and you're putting in so much per month, it's kind of a dollar cost averaging strategy. The benefit of that is even when the market's going down, if you stay disciplined and keep buying in each month, keep buying these shares, you're getting those shares cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And when the market comes back up, you're going to benefit much, your portfolio is going to rebound much faster and you're going to benefit from that. So these are some principles we're going to get into. When you look at navigating, this is a Forbes article, Navigating 5 Critical Retirement Mistakes and the Next 10 Years Being Ugly for Your 401k, and talking about 401k problems. Those are the things I'm going to share with you, but also, most importantly, strategies on how you can improve it. And again, asset allocation is the key. So stocks, bonds, cash, what percentage you would need in each one. Then we'll break it down a little further. With those stocks, when you're looking at your stock funds, the stock options available within your 401k, you want to be thinking, again, if you can find passive. So let's start with, say, large caps, an S&P 500 index fund. Okay, so if we can get your large growth in there. We look for another index fund, maybe it's a large growth value, if that would be available. Small caps, all right, we want a small growth. Now, the key with these, again, index funds. So an example would be, if I'm looking at a passively managed S&P 500 index fund, it's going to have 500 companies in it, right? The 500 largest companies in the United States, they make up 70% of the equity in the stock market, and they outperform about 90% of actively managed funds pretty consistently. So here's the other part. When you're looking at that passive one, right? That's how you tell. That's the S&P. What's the active managed that you'll see? If you're looking at a large cap fund and it's actively managed, it's going to have less than 500 companies. Typically, you might see even 50 to 100, maybe 150 companies. Because that active manager is thinking that they can look inside that index, as those 500 companies we were just talking about, and that they're not somehow going to know, they're going to have a crystal ball and be able to figure out which of those companies are going to do better than the others. All right, that's the premise under which they're operating. The reality is, the research shows it doesn't work. Okay, these active managers are not able to pick the winners and losers. Here's another thing to look at. So when you're looking at your 401k, all right, and the material that's provided from your employer, all right, one of the things you want to look at there is try to figure out, not just looking at the 1, 3, 5, 10-year returns, because the past returns have nothing to do with the future, right? No promise that you're going to get those same returns. So if you look at a fund that seemed to do really well in that period compared to other funds, doesn't mean it's going to do well again. Actively managed funds, occasionally there'll be some funds that beat the S&P. The problem is it's just blind luck that they do. We know that, again, because the research shows us that. We can look at those funds that beat the S&P, let's say over a 5 or 10-year period, and then look at the next 5 or 10-year period and see them underperform dramatically. All right, so we know they just got lucky. Otherwise, they'd consistently beat the S&P. So if you understand the difference between passive and active management, this can go a long way to helping you with regard to your setting up your portfolio within your 401k. All right, the next part of that is when you're looking at those things in the 401k, and you can talk to your employer. You want to know, what are the fees? What are the costs in that 401k? If I pick this fund, okay, but and this is another part of active management. Active managed funds have higher fees. All right, that's the way those work. So a passively managed fund is going to have lower fees. Lower fees, besides the performance, is going to give you more return that you get to keep. Right? So again, Passively managed index funds are going to outperform over time actively managed funds. And because they have lower costs, that gives them an added advantage in terms of more return for you. So this is the big part of how you select. The next thing is understanding that the academic research. The Nobel Prize winners, Dr. Harry Markowitz back in 1990 and Dr. Fama in 2013, won the Nobel Prize in economics for their equity research. And this is in Dr. Markowitz, the father of modern portfolio theory, showed how if you blend these asset categories together, you can even beat the index. So now we can take it a step further. So we know that indexing will beat, index funds are going to beat actively managed funds. So again, passive management beats active management. The next part is showing how that asset allocation works and using the academic research there, such as the three-factor model. And that's what I'm going to share with you. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I'll show you how you can set up this three-factor model, what it's made up of, all right? And with that, show you how you can get the most out of your 401k, and then other strategies for you to help save for retirement to make sure you can attain and maintain your standard of living and quality of life, all right? All of that and more. Join me here. I'll be right back on the Retirement Report.